Alright everyone, and welcome back to this series of video. So we are building a resume using Gatsby, and in this video we'll be focusing on the styling. So we'll be doing installing the Sass plugin for Gatsby. We're going to use a lot of grids. We are going to use modules, and we are also gonna set up the themes, so we can have like a dark themes and a light theme. And yeah, so I changed a little bit of the code that I made for the last video in order to add some IDs and everything, reorganizing stuff around, to just focus this video on the CSS, SCSS, Sass, how much you want. All right, so we're gonna get started. So first of all, what you need is to actually install npm install. So you need node Sass and Gatsby plugin Sass, and you want to save that. So while this is installing, we are going to change a few things. So first of all, you need to, let's go zoom here. We are going to add the plugin. So it's just there, Gatsby plugin Sass, and we want to add this. And we are good to go. All right, so you just installed new packets, you change your configuration. What you want is to reload the server. All right, so we are going to start by doing like a general or global CSS. So we are just gonna import a file that will just like do the whole CSS thing, and we'll see some of the features of Sass. So we can add like variables, the cascading straight into the CSS. We are going to extend some classes as well, and at the end of the video we'll see how you can break the silo between React and your JavaScript code and your CSS code and the Sass code. So how you can inject-ish variable from one to another, and see how you can do and use that for theming of your application and be very, very effective with a few lines of code. All right, so we are going to create a new folder, which is going to be called style, and we are going to get a general.css, and I just like this general.scss, and this will be our global CSS producer. So just to make sure we actually do something good, we are going to see here the background color, and now what we need to do is import that global SCSS file, and to be done very simply by general.scss, and this is going to reload, and here we go, we have a big and bright yellow page. All right, so I'm going to change this very quickly, and there we go. Okay, so we're going to start with the dark theme, and we'll see first some of the few tricks you can do with SCSS. So the first one is you can actually import other CSS files, other SCSS files. You can import over the network. So if you want to load custom fonts or anything, you can do everything of that straight into the SCSS. In our case, we are going to start by adding CSS Reset. So if you search for CSS Resets, you'll get plenty of different options. I'm gonna grab the first one. So CSS Resets are basically reset.css. They are basically just codes that will normalize all of the default rendering across different browsers. So for instance, Internet Explorer might have different margins for the paragraph than Safari can have. And if you are not taking too much care of that, you will run into problems where the display will be very different in between browsers. So this forces same defaults, and this will force you to actually build your CSS and kind of remove a little bit of the inconsistency between browsers. So we're going to import reset SCSS, and for SAS files and SCSS files, you really need to make sure you add all of the semicolons, because if you don't, you are going to have a very, very bad time. All right. And you, of course, need to save this one as well. And you'll see, here we go, all of the margin and everything disappeared. We have like a fully naked CSS, and we can now build our styles. So I'm going to add another file that we are going to be using to manage our variables. So creating a new one. It's going to be variables.scss, and here we are going to define variables. So for instance, we are going to start with background color, and this is going to be, okay, I'm going to take numbers a little bit out of my ass. We want link to be something like sure, maybe a little bit more green here. D3 FF. All right, this is going to be a light blue. We want highlight to be something like a greenish color. So maybe 4, yes, light green. And we want to get a color for the text. This is going to be what I like to call cocoa, which is light gray. And we will add some lines, border or something. And we want to be something a little bit greenish as well. So it's going to be a little bit more here, a little bit here, yes. So it's a gray greenish. And we are going to import this into our general. All right. So we are going to deal in the CSS with media queries, and mostly small screen or large. So it's going to be mobile first. So we'll be doing the mobile display first, then we are going to be dealing with larger screens, and we'll also be dealing with prints. So we are going to give us a few default classes that we are going to be extending later on, and this is going to save us a lot of variables of the CSS. So it's going to be, for instance, everything that is going to be highlighted is going to be in that greenish color, for instance. But if you are printing it, it's going to be pure black, for instance. So we are not printing weird green things, and yeah. So we are going to say highlighted is going to be of color highlight. But if you are printing it, this is going to be color black. So when you have this, what you can do is you can actually so let's call this super highlighted, and this is going to be something like extend highlighted, and we are going to add a few things there. So we're going to add a padding bottom of half a rem, and of course you need to semicolon everything, and we are going to add a border bottom of 1 solid, and the color is going to be line. All right, so we are going to extend classes in this example. You can also use mixins, which are basically class extension on steroid. But for the sake of simplicity, we are going to keep on extending classes. Mixins are a little bit cleaner because you won't have those dummy classes in your end result CSS, but it's also way easier to understand, and yeah, we're going to use those ones. All right, so let's go with the CSS or the SCSS parts. So the first thing that we will want to do even before the body is going to define our link colors. So it's going to be, for instance, color is going to be link. We want, for instance, to be font weight bold, or maybe we don't need this, and we are going to text decoration to be none. So if you are very focused on accessibility, you may want to leave the underline under your links. In my case, it's a little bit of a presentation thing, but yeah, if you are concerned a lot of accessibility, it's easier because it's like the default way of links. And we are going to deal with prints. So when you are printing a link, it's really nice to have like the text of the link, but it's also very convenient to have the URL. So we are going to say that ampersand, which is this element, so in that case it's the anchor tag. After, so when we are printing links, we want to add an element which is going to have a content being something like this, and the attribute of href, and here closing the link. So, which means that if I go, so you see like the link change colors, I'm going to zoom a little bit. If I am going to print this page, print, you'll see that we get the actual href of the links. So it's very convenient when you are printing things, so people can actually go to the links you've set up. After that, we are going to go here now, body. So the body is going to be completely ignored by prints. So you can set up a lot of things there that will be not used at all by the printers. So here we defined a background color, and we also defined a color. So it's going to change here to get something a little bit lighter. And now we are going to go and do the styling of the page itself. So if we inspect this, and I'm going to put the inspect right there, and I'm going to zoom here, you'll see that Gatsby actually has a 2 wrapper model. So you get your div with an ID of __ Gatsby, but you get a second div which is due to how the router works and accessibility things. It's not really interesting, but it's non-trivial to get rid of those 2 wrappers, but it doesn't really matter much for us because we are going to use SCSS to just target something very specific. And then here you see we have our actual code that we did ourselves in React. So the big feature, and you saw a small the big features of Sass and SCSS is the way you can cascade things. So we used it here. So rather than having media queries wrapping all of the code, so then you have like a big CSS part, then you have a media query for larger screen, then you have another big CSS thing, then you have another media query for super large screen, then you have you can wrap everything in a cascading cascading style, sorry. So it's going to be very convenient for us because we are going to use this property to be designing our code to be very cascading. So here I just target the default Gatsby div, and I'm getting direct descendants that are divs, so my wrapper, and that's where we are going to put most of our code. So we are going to say that this, and I'm going to remove here and put it on the bottom here so it doesn't waste too much space. And yes, so we are going to use a lot of grids in this example, and the reason is it gets a lot of bad reputation for being a little bit complex, but I'm going to show you how you can use it and be very efficient, and that the syntax is actually very simple. So we are going to use grids, and we are going to use the special trick that makes everything super simple, which is grid template. So that template is going to define how the grid behaves. So we are on the mobile first approach. So we are going to build the mobile first, then we are going to alter how the CSS is declared for larger screen and for prints. So in our grid template, we will want to have our navigation on top with an automatic height. Then we will want our meta to be following, height automatic as well. Then we will want our page. Then we will want our static information. And that's all we have at the moment. So I added the static information page, which is basically the skill sets, the links, and language, and also the profile, in order to, so I added this to the code, and it's also in the resume.json. It's stuff that will be present on every pages, but it's less important than your name, your location, and your contact information. And now we are going to set up the width of the column. So we have only one column in this example because we are going to be building it for smartphones. So it's going to be automatic, but in fact it's going to be 100%. But let's call it automatic. And then you absolutely need to semicolon it. So this is very simple, and in this case it will not change much. It actually reshuffle a little bit of the code. So we have navigation that's declared here, then we have our meta here, then everything here is static, which is going to be shuffled at the bottom of the page, and then we have our page with all of the information here, which is going to be up one layer. So it's something you can do with flexboxes if you want. It works just well. You can use flex orders, sorry, and you can reshuffle things. But we'll see it's very convenient for us to use grid for larger screen and print later on because it's very visual, and you'll see the really good aspect of grids. So we are going to declare that the width of this element is 100%, and we are going to set a max width. For instance, the max width, it's going to be well, yes, 900 pixel. For some reason, it's just like it's a little bit stupid, but why not? And we are going to give it a margin, which is going to be 0 and automatic. So if for some reason our screen is super huge but doesn't trigger media queries, it's going to be centered. So there is a property for grids to center themselves within the page. For the sake of being very clear, we're going to use like the vanilla CSS way of centering things, but you can also center vertically using justify content and align content. So if you are interested in more grids, you can grid cheat sheet here, and you'll see here a complete guide to grids. So there you can see everything, and some of the first part of this are the beginning of the specification, which is why grid gets a very bad rep. But if you go a little bit downstairs, you'll see all of the good stuff like gaps, templates, and everything. All right, so we are going to do just that, and we are also going to add a grid gap of half a rem. Sure. All right. So it's going to change. All right. And you'll see that if I go and inspect things, I'm going to zoom on here, and I'm going to bring back this on the right. And yes, let's go here. Let's go. If I trigger this this checkbox, it makes the grid appears. So you see here the first line of the grid, then here's the second line, third line, fourth line that you can't see yet. But in between those lines, you can see there are gaps, and that's what we just defined in grid gaps. So grid gaps works for gaps horizontally and vertically. So if you specify two values, the first one is going to be for the vertical gaps, and the second one for the horizontal gaps. Right, let's go back to our code. Here we go. So we have our gaps and everything is good. We are now going to look at wider screens. So for wider screens, no, let's first focus on displaying specific elements at specific places. It's what we define here with navigation, meta, page, because all of those are just identifier, but they are identifying nothing at the moment. So we are going to say that the header with the identifier of header, which is not the best identifier, but sure, it doesn't really matter much, is going to have the grid area of navigation. Yes. The section with the ID of static is going to be the grid area of static. The section with the ID of meta is going to get the grid area of meta. And of course, the section with the identifier of page is going to get the grid area of page. So here we just defined our elements and we link those identifier with elements. This will reshuffle here. This static part is going to be pushed to the bottom because we defined here that static goes to the bottom. So here we go. And if I didn't miss anything, yes, for sure, the page is the third line. So first line, second line, third line. And here goes the static part. So we are going, for the sake of easier visualization, we are going to also say that every direct children of that wrapper is going to get a padding of 1 rem and also going to get a background color of beige section. I'm not sure I defined it. I didn't. So we are going to define here background section. This is going to be a little bit darker. Let's call it 30-30-30. Yes. And here they go. So, sorry, you see all of our section and you see there's only one column with all of our information. All right. So now we are going to see why grids are so good and so powerful. And it's really interesting because we are going to do it in very few lines. So if we are in using a wider screen, so for instance, screen, and let's say the min width is going to be 900 pixel, which makes this rule a little bit useless, but all right. We want the grid template to actually change. So the grid template is going to be something like navigation and navigation. So we are going to do 2 columns with automatic height. We want to get the page on the left side and we will want to get the meta information on the right. We will want to still get the page and here get the static information. And that's pretty much it. And this is going to be 2/3 here, 1/3 here. All right, let's save this. And now this rule is going to kick in because the screen might be larger and we don't redefine it. So if I zoom out, there you go, you get a very nice grid. So if I go closer to the native display, you'll see that you get your navigation on top. Here is your page. You get your meta information here, and here goes the static information. So you can see it's very, very convenient because you can now move things around. And for instance, if you're not sure where you want to place everything and you don't want to wrap everything in containers, deal with flex boxes or everything, and be like, oh, I need those two on the right side to be on the right side, then you need to wrap them into containers, do like a flex box in between the page and the container with those two things. But then if you want for extra large screen to be 3 columns, then it becomes a little bit, it's become a little bit more complicated. And here we keep like a very visual way of representing your information. And we'll see just that with the print media query. So if you are printing, you may want a very different template that might not be possible with flexboxes. So in this case, it would still be kind of possible, but would be difficult. Would be a grid template, which is going to be the meta on top, 2 columns, automatic. Then we would want the page on the left side, and we would want the static on the right side, automatic. And this would be the same 2/3. And we'll see just how this renders. If I want to print, then I will get, so it's not a very good presentation at the moment, but this would get the meta on top, and then you get 2 columns. And you'll see here the navigation is pushed on the bottom, and the reason for that is because it's not, navigation is not defined anywhere. So if I was to just say, here we get navigation, automatic, it would go back to the grid, and I would just here see the navigation, and this would be better. But we are going to do like a better management of the navigation, because we don't want the navigation on the print at all, because it doesn't mean anything for anyone if you want to print this. So we are going to actually not show it. So I'm going to remove this one. Here we go. And that's pretty much it for the container. So if you want to, because at the moment here you get 2 columns with the same height. So you see here you have extra space, but you can definitely here save something like align self, and it's gonna be start. Flex start, which is a bit strange, but no, it's not flex start, it would be start, because we're not flexing anything. Oh, sure, it was there. Start. sometimes I get confused. You can just say don't stretch, because stretch is the default value, but just take the spot you need and leave some space. In our case, we're gonna leave it as stretch, because we want like a clean 2-column display. So we are going to go to our header, and we are going to push those 2 navigations to be top left, top right. And here we'll see another property of grids, which is also very convenient. So this is going to be a grid. So first of all, before anything else, if we are printing, we just don't need to display anything. Yes, and I'm going to put this below our display grid. All right, so we're going to use a grid for this as well, and rather than using 1 column, in that case, we are going to use 1 line. So we want the grid template, and hopefully at the end of this video, you'll be convinced that the grid template is awesome. So here we're going to say pages, anything, length. This is going to be of automatic height. The first column is going to be automatic width. This one is going to take 1 remainder of the space. And this one is going to take automatic space. All right. So just doing this will put everything in a mashup kind of thing, because we didn't define any identifiers. So the first element takes the first cell available, the second one takes the second one, and the third one takes the third one. But here we only have 2 elements. So this is where grid starts to be a little bit more malleable than flexboxes, because for flexboxes to do something like this, you would need to add an empty container, empty div, for instance, to say take as much space as you want, or you would need to define the spacing of the flexes as space in between. But maybe you don't want to have flex in between. Maybe you want to have 3 elements with 1 on the left, 2 on the right, 1 on the left, 1 center, 1 on the right. So it's easier, in my opinion, to just define the look of your grid and then map your elements to which cell you want them to. So in our case, we are going to say that for all navigation, we will want to say that all the anchors yes, let's go like this. All the anchors have a display of inline block, and all of the anchor that straight up follow another anchor are going to get a margin left of 1 rem, for instance. So this will space up our links in between each element. So you see here portfolio and the first link are still mashed up, and that's because we are using the adjacent selector. You could also do that with adding that margin right and saying the last element has no margin right. I find it more elegant this way. And we will want now to say in the same vein that the first navigation, first child, is going to get a grid area of pages. So here, the left side, and the last one, so you could use last child. I'm going to use the adjacent again, so this one as well you will hopefully learn about, see a use for it. It's very, very convenient, very, very powerful, so definitely a good thing. So this one is going to get the grid area of length. And just defining it will push the lengths on the right side, and there they go. So if I'm inspecting this element and I display the grid, you'll see that we have a huge element in the middle, which is our dots. And then on the right side you get one, and on the left side you get the other one. So navigation is done. We are going to go into statics, and we'll see this one is very, very maybe boring because it's going to be just straight up styles. But yeah, let's go. So we want all of the H2s in the static, which is this block here, to be highlighted, but also have underlines. So here we are going to extend, and we are going to extend that super highlighted class, because it's highlighted, but it's also with the bottom. So super highlighted, and just doing this should be enough to get them here. All right. We will want to no, that's fine. Let's just say that all of the paragraphs here are going to get margins. So the reset removed all the margins, and we are going to bring back some. We don't need margins on the here. There we go, it's a little bit better. And we are going to leave it kind of this way. We are going to take all of the lists, and lists are going to have a margin bottom of 1 rem, for instance. Doesn't really matter. This will like extend a little bit everything, gives a little bit more breathing rooms, and yeah. All right, so we would need as well, and I think this is safe to assume this is going to be for all of the highlighted thing. All right, a little bit of space here, and this looks good. We are now going to go into the meta, so that part. This is going to be so if we zoom, this is good. We would want this to be to get like a display that's a little bit different. So we are going to say the text align is going to be centered. And of course you need to semicolon everything. but center would be a little bit strange when you go to this specific things. So we are going to say that for screen and min width of 900 pixel, the text align is going to be on the left side, and media print as well. So you could merge those two media queries. For the sake of readability, I'll just leave them as two different media queries. So this doesn't change our display here, but this will change when we have it this way. So it's a little bit more preeminent. We are going to get the H1. So the H1 is going to extend the super highlighted. There we go. So it should be greenish with a line. That's good. But we would want this to get a font size a little bit more prominent, so maybe 15 rem. We would want this one definitely to get bolder, so font weight is going to be bold, and yeah. All right, so here we go. We're more prominent. So in that case, I'm not really sure if I like the line in smaller things. So here in the big display, it's fine, but maybe not in the smaller one. So I'm going to remove the super highlighted for just highlighted. And we are going to add the line as a media query. So the same media query that we have here. We are going to say that this actually extend super highlighted. And what did I miss? Oh, maybe you call. From within the media. Okay, let's go. So you would then just border bottom 1 pixel solid. We could be doing like a reverse media query to remove the border and stuff, but in the end it's just the same line. And we are going to add the padding, which is 0.5, and margin bottom, which is 0.5 as well. And this is padding bottom. All right. So if we go back here, we get our line, but not in the normal view. Still think this deserves small of margin bottom as well here. And here we go. So that's pretty much what we would need. We may want to style a little bit of our paragraphs. Maybe add them a little bit of margin bottom, 0.5, say consistent. And yeah, so that would be pretty much our meta tag. All right, so now we would need to style the page itself, so the information, and this is where we'll see most of the styles, and this is also where we'll see how we can use modules to make it a little bit simpler and less crowded on the CSS file itself, or the SCSS file in this case. So let's go with page. So we would want all of the article within the page to get a margin bottom of 1 rem, for instance. So this would separate a little bit the experience to education. So in my case, I only have 2 sections in my page that we're currently using. What would we want? We would want on those articles to say that those H2s are going to extend super highlighted. All right. And we would want, all right, so let's grab this font size, pass it to here, so for super highlighted. All right, there we go. And this is going to also get it, so it still works the same. All right, so then we'll see the line is at the same place and everything. We are not off shifting like the first line that we have. So those one, we don't know where they will be because it depends on the data. But you don't want those 2 first lines to be offsetted. Your OCD won't be happy with this. And that's pretty much it. So now everything will be defined by the different types of cards that we have in our pages. And we'll see now how you can use those cards to use CSS modules. So we'll see this. Maybe I'll just add another thing for this static thing. So I go back to static. If I inspect here, I will see that this is paragraphs. So for all the paragraphs that gets the skill set class, I would want them to get maybe a bottom line, and I will want the strong element within those skill sets to be extending highlighted, if I'm not mistaken. There we go. Okay, we'll just not use the lines. This is ugly. But we want to keep like that greenish thing. All right. So we are going to our components and we see that we get our education templates, and we will want to define style just for that education thing. So we are going to create a new file, call it education.module.scss. We are going to import style, and we will want our variables. There we go. I'm going to import that module into the component. So I'm going to import style from education.module.scss, and we'll see how we can do stuff here. So if rather than defining a static class name, I'm going to define here education. I'm not going to use education, actually. I'm going to use card, for instance. It doesn't really matter. This is going to be the class that we are referring here. So for instance, if I'm going here, background color yellow, must begin with yes, so you need to semicolon everything. You'll see that all of our education gets the background color. This is very convenient because if I inspect here and if I bring back on the right side, and I'm going to zoom for you here, you'll see that the name of the class is not something static like education or something that can be reused by mistake, that can be overridden and at a very different part of the application. This is a unique identifier that only applies to that component. So it's very convenient because then we can define style in there that is going to be exclusive to that component. And also it will remove some of the styling from the general SCSS thing. So it's going to be easier to just like manage, and it's closer to the component itself. So we'll have more control, and everything is like easier to reference. All right, so we are going to build that card thing. So of course we're not going to use a background yellow, and I'm going to go back here, put the code, and here we go. Okay, so we are within the card. We are going to say that we have a padding, which is going to be 0.5 rem. We don't need any on the sides. We want a border bottom, which is going to be 1 pixel solid and still line. We will display it as a grid, and we'll see another very good use of grids in this example. And we'll see that the grid template, which is very good, yet again, grid templates, very good. We will define not just columns of stuff, we'll define 3 columns with 2 lines. So we will want the date to be on the left side, we will want the title, we will want the location, and this will be automatic. So on the right side is the height. We will want the date again. We will want the description, and then we will want location. Automatic. This is going to be 100 pixel. This is going to be whatever space we have, and 100 pixel. All right. So we'll see that using this, education is going to be all over the place, and that's just because we didn't define which element goes to which area. So we're going to do that just now. So we'll see that the date is going to go to the grid area of date, of course. We want the h3 to go to the grid area of title. We will want the class description to go to the grid area of description, and we will want the class location to go to the grid area of location. So we'll save this and nothing's gonna happen, and that's just because in our education component we are using still static identifier for classes. What you need to do, as we saw before, modules are going to generate unique identifier. So you'll need to say here is style date. The h3 is targeted not by class name, so it's fine. Style desk. And this one is style location. And doing that, everything's gonna shuffle around, and here we go. So we have one more thing to do in that component, and it is to vertically center dates and the location. So we are going back to our education, and we want the date to be align self center, and we want the same for the location, and we are going to actually here extend highlighted because we want more colors. Okay. I missed a semicolon. There we go. All right, here we go. The dates are centered. The same goes for the location, and we have our nice looking and colorful titles. So we will need to do the same for experiences, and you can either, so the best practice would be to create another module, do the same thing, but for the sake of simplicity and just to show you that it's more like a convention than an actual enforcement, we are going to import from education, and we are going to change this here. So it was card, this one was date, this one was desk, style.desk, and here styles.location. And this will shuffle everything here. Let's go. Oh, sure. I didn't include the right thing, so it was education.mod CSS. Yes. And here we go. All right, so everything's nice. We get everything here. We'll see that there is a small problem with our application. Is for the first time, I defined this on the not as mobile first, but as desktop first, and this becomes a problem because if we limit the width of the window, we'll see we have here horizontal scrolling, which is really not great. So you could be doing this multiple ways. So you could be doing the grid templates mobile first, then change it to wider screen, we'll just do this the opposite, just to show you that it's just fine. It's also a convention. Doing mobile first is to remove the strain on CPUs that would be less powerful, but it works just the same if you do the opposite. And it's just rewriting few rules, so it's not going to be a big deal. So rather than using min width, we're going to be using maxed width. And I'm going to check when the problems occur. So it's going to be around 480. So 480 would be if something is less than 500 pixels, we are going to change just the grid template, and this will fix all of our problem. So in that case, we will change the orientation of the template. So we'll see, rather than having 2 lines with 3 columns, we are going to have 2 columns with 3 lines. And the first one is going to be the title. It's going to be automatic height. Then we'll see the description. It's going to be automatic height as well. And then we'll see here the date and location, which are also going to be automatic height. And those 2 are going to be shared equally. All right. So when you have space, this will get the default grid area with left side, right side, dates, and location. And when you give less width, this will switch to the mobile template if you want. All right, so I think we're pretty good here. We would want to add modules for other types of lines. So in that case, I am going to put them within that page thing, because it's going to be very simple. Actually, I'm just going to skip it, and you can do whatever you want because it's not very interesting. And we are going to go to the theming part of the video. So we have our page. It's nice and everything, but maybe someone doesn't want to get the dark theme because it's like edgy or whatever. It just like, maybe it's not for everyone's taste. So we are going to install a new component, which is going to be called theme.js. And we are going to import React, but also useState from React. And we are going to export a default. We won't need props here. Well, we could load props within the resume.json, but we'll keep it very simple, so we're not gonna do that. We will want to just create a theme, set theme, and this is going to be useState and dark. All right. We will do a section for us to actually display the toggle thing. So we are going to say that we want to return a section. This is going to return dark and light. And if we unclick here, you will want to set theme to dark. And if you click here, you will want to set theme to light. All right. So if I just save this, nothing happens. I need, of course, to import this, import theme from style theme. All right, and you'll see that theme will actually go to the bottom. Okay, so you don't see it. I'm just gonna show myself, but here is the theme part of it. We are going to push this within within our grid and display it on different display it for mobile, but also for larger screen. So we have here a new section. So our section with the ID's theme is going to get the grid area of theme. There we go. We will need to, of course, add an ID here, theme. And we will also need now to display it here. So for mobile, this is going to be at the bottom. There we go. And here it's going to be on the left side. Yes, something like this. And of course I need to define it as auto. All right, so now we can work on the theme. So what we're going to do is we are going to use one of the newer specification of CSS4, which is variable within CSS. So what you are usually doing with Sass and React is you have two silos. So on one part you have the code, and on the other one you have the styling, but it's quite difficult to actually send information from the code part to the styling, and usually you will end up doing on the component level an inline styling, which is fine, but it's not really good on a grander scheme. So if you want to change the whole theme of your page, it's not really great. But using CSS variables, you can actually, from the code, choose a lot of functionality. So I'm going to show you how this would be done. So for instance, if you are here, you would want to say that CSS is equal to, and for that we will take our variable things here and we'll put that into theme. But rather than using $, which is the variable for Sass, we're going to use dash dash. There we go, there we go, there we go, there we go. And we are going to inject those variables within the page. So if you go here for section, we are going to return an array of elements. There you go. And we are going to return a style thing, and we are going to dangerously set inner HTML. to HTML, CSS. All right, and we want to close this one. So what this will do, it will actually push those variables within a style element. And now that we have this, we will be able to access those variables from within the Css files. So for the sake of simplicity again, I'm going to make sure those variables are indeed passed at the right space. So usually for variables, it's recommended to use the pseudo class of root. So they all inherit, and yeah, it usually works better this way. We are going to, so you see there's no change at the moment. First of all, because we didn't change any of the values, but also because we didn't plug those variables within our Css. So I'm going to change this background color to actually call background color, and we are going to do that for all of them. So I'm going to remove this, 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 this. So now you see those variables, they're pretty useless because we have them all over the code. We could be using CSS variables from the beginning, but it's going to be very good for us because this syntax is a little bit more verbose than $ BG colors, for instance. So we are going to keep that into our code, and we are going to populate all of this, highlight, color, line. All right. There we go. And now we will want to actually do the switching of the theme. So for the sake of this example, I'm going to actually put the theme here and the static on the bottom, just so you can see when I click into stuff. So it's going to be pushed here a bit higher. So you can see when I click to light and dark. So it's not like behind my camera. And we are going to give it an if-else clause, which is going to be if theme is equal to light, we are going to change that CSS variable. And that variable is going to be, I'm going to pull colors out of my ass again, D00, so very, very light gray. Background is going to be white, actually. The links are going to be straight up blue. The highlights are going to be red. The color is obviously going to be darker, so 30, 30, 30, and the lines are going to be reddish, so it's going to be lots of red, a little bit less of green, a little bit less of blue, and this should do the trick. All right, so if I go to light, here we have the light theme, then dark, then light, and dark, and it changed the whole, it does change the whole display of the page. So you have actually theming on the bottom. So I go to light, there it goes, and we go to dark. And it also do the theming on that side. Oh, of course, I would need to. It's actually a very good thing that I tried it. So here theme is if we are printing, we want to not display this theme. Oh, I did it before it was actually ready. Oh, come on. Oh, now it's gonna be a little bit too long, so it's gonna be 2 different pages. We're gonna fix this in a different ways. So basically, this block is too long, the page block. So it pushed this to another thing. One of the quick fix we can do to make this work for print for this specific display is going to just change and put this in 2 different columns. So it's not great, but it's going to be fine. But you see here using our variable here with the media print black, we are not pushing the red or the green to our prints. Everything is black and it's all fine. And we could actually say here the font weight is going to be bold for prints. So if you go here and you want to print it, you still get like a small prominent highlighted thing. All right. So you get the light theme, dark theme. You could be doing logic to get this a little bit better display. So if you want like to have like a toggle, if you want to have 3 different themes, you can add a new one here and let's go. But we'll see you have another problem. So this is a component within your page that use state. And of course, if you reload, the state disappears. So you will want to add ways for your component to memorize the theme that the user selected. So there are many ways you can do it. I'm going to do it very simply using local storage. So it's very convenient, but there is one problem with local storage. Local storage is a direct descendant to the window object that doesn't exist at the under the node environment. So if you try to build the pages with Gatsby, if you use the local storage, you are going to get an error because Node has no idea of the local storage. It's on the browser side. So to fix this, we are going to do a little bit of checking to see in what environment we are. And we are going to say that the default theme is going to be dark. We are going to check if we are in a browser. So it's going to be type, not type, but type of, and we want to test the window object. So if this is different from undefined, we are in a browser and we can do stuff. So we are going to say that the default theme is equal to the local storage get item theme. And if this doesn't exist, we want to keep the default theme. And here we will want to say this is the default theme. And we are going to need to, rather than use state staters here, we're going to need a function that actually set the state, but also set the local storage. So in our case, it's going to be set theme and local storage. It's going to await a string, and it's going to do two different things. It's going to set the theme first to the string. And yet again, if we are in the browser, different from undefined, we will local storage set item theme to string. And that's pretty much all we need, except we will need to replace set theme by this, set theme by this. This second check is not really super important, because when you execute that function, it's from a click, so for sure you are in the browser. But just for the sake of being thorough, we want to check this and not have errors. So if I go to dark settings and I go to portfolio, it works. If I go to light settings and I go to portfolio, it now still works because it's getting the thing from the local storage. And most of all, if you reload, it will keep the theme that you selected. So keep the dark theme or keep the light theme. And I think that's pretty much it for this video. It's a pretty long one, I think, but hopefully you'll be you have learned something, and that walkthrough actually convinced you that grids are not so difficult and very useful, and also that CSS variables are just awesome and very convenient for theming React apps. All right, so I guess I'll be working off camera, off video for this, for my CV. And yeah, I hope you'll be pushing new features to the repo, and that we can have like a really nice resume generator online that's very convenient. And maybe someday later we'll be doing like a GraphQL API to actually serve that information, and we'll be doing like online builder, so you don't have to get your hands dirty into the JSON. And yeah, so that's all for this series, and I hope you liked it. If you really liked it, make sure to subscribe. And for the 2 people that went along to the end of this video, thank you very much, and hope to see you in the next video. All right, cheers.